one thing. Yesterday, first of all, I'm Debbie Hall, and I'm glad you're here today. My minister yesterday made this statement in his sermon. He said, in our world, there are 300,000 varieties of the beetle. Really, I never knew that. He said, God must love diversity. And I thought how appropriate to what we've been doing this week at MEek School, that our Creator, the Creator, chose to have 300,000 varieties of a beetle. So he celebrated diversity, and we are celebrating it as well. So thank you for being here this afternoon.
Good morning. Well, it's afternoon there.
Yeah, exactly. Good morning, good afternoon.
It is, and I am so grateful to speak to you. I am a very big fan of what you've done with Heads Together and hashtag Okay to Say, the videos with Annie and Joe, the beautiful films that you've made with the Heads Together campaign. They told beautiful stories, and it reminded me how much my mental health changed my life.
You're really kind to say so. I mean, Harry, Catherine, and I really felt this was such an important area that throughout all our charitable work, whether it was the veterans, homelessness, addiction, most of it seemed to stem back to mental health issues. And I read your open letter you wrote the other day, and I thought it was incredibly moving and very brave of you to write down, such personal feelings. And I wanted to ask you very much how you found speaking out and how it made you feel.
It made me very nervous at first. For me, waking up every day and feeling sad and going on stage is something that is very hard to describe. There's a lot of shame attached to mental illness. You feel like something's wrong with you. And in my life, I go, oh my goodness, look at all these beautiful, wonderful things that I have, and I should be so happy. But you can't help it. In the morning when you wake up, you are so tired, you are so sad, you are so full of anxiety in the shape that you can barely think. But it was like saying, this is a part of me, and that's okay.
It's interesting to see and hear from you how much having that conversational, having that ability to speak to someone really made a difference to you. And I think for me, the little bits that I've learned so far about mental health was very much a case of, it's okay to have this conversation. It's really important to have this conversation, and that you won't be judged. It's so important to break open that fear and that taboo, which is only going to lead to more problems down the line.
Yes, it can make a huge difference. I feel like we are not hiding anymore. We're starting to talk, and that's what we need to do, really.
Absolutely, it's time that everyone speaks up and really, it feels very normal about mental health. It's the same as physical health. Everybody has mental health, and that we shouldn't be ashamed of it, and that just having a conversation with a friend or family member can really make such a difference.
Even though it was hard, it was the best thing that could come out of my mental illness, was to share it with other people and let, our generation as well as other generations know that if you are feeling not well in your mind, that you're not alone, and that people that you think would never have a problem do.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And I hear you're potentially coming over to the UK in October.
Yes.
It'd be great if when you are over here we could meet up and maybe have a chat a bit more, get our heads together about how much more we can do to tackle this.
I would love that. We have to make the strongest, most relentless attempt we can to normalize mental health issues so that people feel like they can come forward.
I can't thank you enough for speaking with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Prince William. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So we're here today to start the conversation at MEek School at the University of Mississippi about living with mental illness.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Okay. Hold on just a minute while I undo this. Thank you, Nikki. Again, we're here today to start the conversation about living with a mental illness, to open the conversation and to make everyone aware of the ways mental health can and perhaps will affect your lives as you are a student or a professional in our community or in other communities. There's a good chance that everyone in this room will be affected by mental illness during their lifetime. When you consider that 1 in 4 people will live with a mental illness at some point, you know that you're going to be affected, whether you yourself has the illness or whether your family member does, or your best friend, or someone you work with. You will be affected by mental illness in your life. It's no respecter of gender, race, age, or religion. It can affect anybody. Statistics tell us that the 1 in 4 people will experience the mental illness, whether we actually have the illness or have a family member with the illness. So let's start with the understanding that mental illness is a disease. It's an illness of the brain, just like people have illnesses of the heart or kidney disease. It's a disease of the brain. It's actually a physical illness. And it affects the way people think, act, and feel. So it's as much a physical illness as these others that we mentioned, and it can be just as chronic as any of those can. Each person up here in front of you today has something in common with Lady Gaga. We all have experienced a mental illness in our lives. Either we are living up with it now or we're living in recovery. So I'd like to introduce this panel to you. On the far side is Hailey. Hailey Heck is an IMC major that began her interest in IMC at a PR internship, and we're glad to have you. Hailey has dealt with anxiety in her life. Next is Justin Geller. Right, I have to write down and put my glasses on now. I can't pretend to be younger than I am. Justin Geller is a child and youth outreach coordinator at Communicare, which is the regional community mental health center. Raise your hands, all of you who work at Communicare. They have tables set up outside. Justin is in recovery from substance abuse, and as a part of that has dealt with anxiety and depression. Abby Vance is a journalism major who transferred to Ole Miss from Holmes Community College and Delta State University. Abby experienced an eating disorder called exercise bulimia and now is living in recovery. Beth Duty is with us today. She is a graduate of the School of Journalism. She actually, however, had a life change in careers and is the owner of Soulshine Counseling and Wellness. Beth is also my step-niece, so I'm very proud to have her here. Lindsay Brett is the assistant principal at Plantersville Middle School, and she's also a doctoral student in the Ole Miss School of Education. Lindsay and I met because she has a family member who received services at my last job, which was North Mississippi State Hospital, a behavioral health program of the Department of Mental Health. So when you look at this group, excuse me, I'm Debbie Hall, and at age 16 I was diagnosed with clinical depression. However, I waited until I was 32 to get assistance because I was a little bit embarrassed by it. And I think maybe if you look at this group and you think about Lady Gaga, were any of you surprised to know that any of us or she was a person living with a mental illness? Raise your hand. You don't have to be embarrassed. It is a little surprising sometimes because we have an image of people who live with a mental illness that is not typically what you see in front of you, and or what you see in Lady Gaga or other people who have a mental illness. But that's likely to do with a lack of understanding, which is stigma. And so what we're trying to do is help you learn a little bit so that you can overcome your stigma and others help us overcome stigma in our Ole Miss community about mental illness. I'll start first by asking Abby Vance to share with you her story.
Okay, well, first off, I just want to say thank you for letting me be here and share my story. And everybody has a story, by the way. Whether you think it's big or small, your story matters. So don't be afraid to share your story. And my hope is that someone somehow will understand the true meaning of this message and have hope that there is possibility for recovery. And I want to say this quick little Bible verse. My mom sent it to me this morning, and it was just really weird how it went with exactly what I would like to say. And it says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. And I don't want to go into full detail of my whole entire story, the times I spent in the darkness, because life on the other side is so much brighter. But when we go through problems, we're not supposed to hide in the dark what God has shown in the light. So we have to share our stories, and it's the only way that we can reach out to people. So I do want to share part of my story because problems are real, and eating disorders are real, mental illnesses are real, addictions are real. Mental illnesses are often overlooked because they're not as easily visible as physical illnesses. But most of all, God is real. And he's the only reason I'm able to share my story and share from a standpoint of victory. And so whenever I try to pinpoint what exactly started my mental illness or eating disorder, it's kind of hard to really figure out the exact time because it's more of like a gradual thing. Like you never really realize you have a problem until, well, you really don't realize why you have a problem because you don't think you're doing anything wrong. Like when you are sick, all you see are your imperfections and you see things that need to be changed. And I also had OCD, so I was continually living in this trap of I couldn't get out of it because I had to do every single day the same way because I thought that that's what I had to do. And I didn't see my parents worried sick about me. I didn't see my best friends worried about me. I didn't see my hair falling out or my bones sticking out or my life fading right before my eyes. And I didn't see all the people who were concerned with me. All I saw was people being nosy, and I was really aggravated that people would think I had a problem. And I was trying to control my own life and instead of letting the one who created my life control me. And I was just scared to let go and ask for help because, like she said, I was afraid of what people would say. Like, oh, Abby has an eating disorder. What's that? Like, she seems like she has her life all together. No, I did not. But I quickly found that control is far more suffocating than I ever intended it for it to be. And it was only when I finally surrendered the control that I thought I wanted to Jesus and asked him for help that I found freedom. And there's a song that goes like, there's freedom in surrender, and that's absolutely true. And David says in Psalm 18 that I cried out to the Lord in my time of need, and he heard me and he healed me. And I can't remember when I first started having an eating disorder, but I can remember the moment that true recovery started happening. It was when I hit my knees and I asked for help. And that's the same with any kind of problem that you're having. And when I finally let go of the need to be in control, I found my life again. And I always tried to take up less space. But when I realized God created us in his image and to enjoy life, I found cinnamon rolls and Pop-Tarts and bagels. And those are really good, and macaroni and cheese. And if you haven't had any of that stuff is really good. So eat that and you can thank me later. But I could go on and on about how life in recovery has been more than I ever dreamed. I never thought I would go through something like this, but I would never take it for granted because it has taught me so much about life and taught me to appreciate every day and make time for spontaneous moments in life. And don't take anything for granted because you're going to miss those days one day. And you don't have to be afraid to ask for help because it doesn't make you weak, and that was my problem. I thought that I had to be so physically fit, and I tried to mask everything by going to the gym or by not eating or whatever. But it was when I admitted that I was weak that I found my strength in Christ alone. And when you let Jesus break your chains, you find your purpose and you find your life and you find your voice and your story, and that's all that matters. And that's why I share my story. At first I didn't want to, I was ashamed, but now I realize that I have a voice and I have a story for a reason, so I could help other people to show that victory can only be found when we let God in and let him fight our battles for us. And there's a song, and I'll just close with this, and I tell this all the time. It's called My Story by Big Daddy Weave. If you've ever listened to it, it's great, and it just says to tell you my story is to tell of him. So that's my story.
Thank you, Abby. Tell us briefly, if you would, what it was like the moment you realized your illness was life-threatening.
when I found out that my mental illness was life-threatening, okay, so mental illnesses, you think it's all in your head, but when you realize that it's life-threatening, that's when I think recovery happens. Because if you think of it as just mental, like it's all in your head, then you don't ever think it's going to affect anything else on your physical, outside day-to-day life. But like what's on the inside is what flows into the outside. So like my life was diminishing. So to find out that my mental illness was affecting my life and everybody else's life is what made me realize that I needed help.
Anybody else? Hailey, can you tell us a little bit about living with anxiety?
So I struggled with anxiety, depression, binge eating disorder, and some bulimia throughout my life. And I first realized it was an issue really my senior year of high school. And it was really difficult. Most people knew me as very happy, bubbly, and then kind of all of a sudden it stopped. My parents got worried and they didn't really know what was going on with me. I was very irritable. And thankfully my parents were there to support me the entire way, and they said, hey, look, we think you have a problem. Can you tell us what's going on? And I'd been seeing a psychiatrist and been on medication for about 4 years in high school, but I hadn't really told anybody about my eating disorder or how OCD had affected my life. And so I sat down with my therapist and had a long crying session, and she suggested that I go to a mental hospital, and I was very, very against that because it's you're not allowed to bring anything sharp. You can't bring any things with ties. And they sat me down and said, okay, this is a step you need to take. We're not trying to hurt you. We want to help you, and we want you to get past this. And so really with their support, that's how I got through it. But anxiety is something that bothers me every day. My OCD, I have to make sure everything's straight, and you have to do things 3 times, and that's something that you just kind of have to live with every day. And medication helps, of course, but it's always there in the back of your mind, like, hey, reminding you I'm here. But yeah.
Lindsay, could you maybe tell a little bit about what it's like as a family member to have your family member with an illness like this?
Absolutely. Family members face a mix of emotions because we're angry because we can't fix what's going on with our loved one. We feel out of control. We feel helpless. But then we're angry with them because there are times where we say, you could do better. And I'm just being completely transparent with you to say that, my sister, 20 years ago, 1997, my sister was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. We had never faced any kind of mental illness in my family. I don't come from a terribly affluent family, but my dad is a politician. He's very well respected in town. He's a judge. We drive nice vehicles. We kind of had it going on. And then what happens is my sister, who was 26 years old, had 3 children, a marriage, everything, all of a sudden, one October falls completely apart. She was a paralegal for my parents' law firm. And what I watched were 3 children lose their mother, and they had her physically, but they didn't have her anymore. And I watched my mom trying to raise 3 children. I had another sister. She and I were at home, so she had 2 high schoolers who she was trying to raise. She was trying to run my dad's law firm. At the same time, their private investigator died of a heart attack. So everything fell on my mom, so she turned to drinking and gambling. So in 1997, 1998, my world fell apart. And, I know what it's like to watch 3 children cry for a woman in Walmart who has blonde hair like their mother because they think it's their mama, because they've not seen their mama because she's at the state hospital or she's at another hospital. I know what it's like to take your sister, I've become conservator of her, and take your sister to St. Francis Hospital in Memphis, and her telling me the whole way there that she's going to voluntarily commit herself. Because see, the legal rights of humans and HIP and everything means that they have to voluntarily commit themselves, or we have to get them committed. It's hard to prove that they are suffering from some kind of disorder. You have to have several doctors' signatures and all of that. There's a lot of red tape to go through. So she's promising me that she's going to go there. Well, we get to St. Francis and she turns around and walks out and says, absolutely not. So I drive all the way back from Memphis and I'm under court order to take her to jail. And so I have to take my sister to jail and watch her walk through that steel door and know that she's done nothing criminally wrong, but she's no longer herself. And it is heart-wrenching. You know, on the family there's so much stress because there have been times where I was teaching school and I would get a phone call from someone in Arkansas and saying, ma'am, do you own a car? Because I bought my sister a car. Do you, my older sister, by the way, do you own a car, such and such? Yes, sir. Well, there's a lady walking back and forth outside of a convenience store. And we've taken her to jail because it's 27 degrees outside and we're afraid that she, will freeze to death. She's talking out of her head. And so I get in my car and I drive to Arkansas, pick up my sister out of the jail, and just trying to get her rehabilitated, trying to get her on the right meds. When a med becomes ineffective because she's been on it 10 years. And she says, but Lindsay, I promise I've been taking my meds, and all of a sudden she's having the same symptoms again. And it wasn't her fault. She's just become immune to the medicine. There's so many emotions from the family side. Like I mentioned earlier, not knowing what to do. We were at an advantage because my dad was the county prosecutor, and then he was the judge. So we knew the legal process. It's called a lunacy hearing. We knew that. I could pick up the phone and call the local chancellor and say, listen, my sister, Jenny, is having trouble again. We've got to get her committed. And they would meet me at the courthouse and sign it. But all of those families who don't have those resources, guys, it's so hard. We have to pick up the phone and call 911. And then the police have to come to wherever our family member is and decide, yes, she's in her right mind and she can stay right here, or no, she needs to go to a hospital or she needs to go to jail. Well, a lot of times when jails are filled up, you can't put them in jail, and a lot of times there aren't beds at hospitals. Another thing is with HIPAA, if I took my sister to one hospital in Memphis, thank the Lord that there were wonderful social workers who would see some gray areas in HIPAA. And my sister would be transported to Memphis Mental Health Institute in the middle of the night without me knowing it. And a social worker would pick up the phone and say, you didn't get this phone call, but you may want to check Memphis Mental Health Institute. That's how a family member feels, and we're angry, yet we're compassionate, because as angry as I would get with her and mad at her for not being a mother to her children, I wouldn't trade places with her for $1 million. I am her caretaker, and I'm 9 years younger. But y'all, do you know what it's like? I think all the time, she has to pick up her phone and call her little sister to come take care of her basic needs. There have been many times where I have cleaned her up where she has become incontinent and lost control of her bladder. The humility she's had to go through, to lose her reputation in a town full of paralegals, and she was a bright paralegal, and for her to walk down Main Street and not be in her right mind, and everybody with whom she formerly worked see her in that state. And then when she gets back on medicine and it's working, and she has to face them again and know that they saw her in that state. You have a heart broken, and then you have to be strong because you have to raise the children and put together the pieces of everything left behind.
It's a really tough situation to be in, and unfortunately for Mississippians, there are some shortfalls in our mental health care, but then there are a lot of good things about our mental health care, and Communicare and LifeCore in this area, but Communicare for you in Oxford.
Can I brag on that for just a second? The greatest thing right now is that my sister's been stable for about 2.5 years, and I attribute it to the life corps in her area. They have a day program. They pick her up every day. They give her structure. They give her activities. They give her community. I don't have to check on her every day. She is fine. She's wonderful. And when they start seeing symptoms, they go ahead and start calling the hospital. They let me know what's going on. I don't have to go through all of them wondering, what am I going to do? Who do I call? They take care of every bit of it, and I can't say enough about that.
All right, so it's a great point that there are resources available, and the state of Mississippi is blessed. Where we've got some shortcomings, we're very blessed in the resources that are available to us. Justin, you want to tell us a little bit about your experiences?
Yeah.
And what you're doing now?
Well, right now I work at Communicare. It's a Systems of Care grant called Hype for Change, and I'm the child needs outreach specialist there. So pretty much my job is to use my experience through my mental illnesses and help these children get through their problems and know that they have a friend and someone there they can relate to. When I was really young, I think I was 2nd grade, I got diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and ADHD. And I always blamed it on a lot of things going on around the household, and a lot of things going on between the divorce of my parents, and I have a twin sister, and she always seemed like she had her life together and mine was falling apart. And the way I was able to escape all that was through drugs, and I took that escape to not feel, to get rid of these mental illnesses, and didn't realize I was opening a whole new door to that, and it brought me down a really tough path, and by the age of 16 years old. I found myself, a full-blown addict, and it was really hard to get help because I had a lot of, I'd call these facilities, and a lot of them would look at me and say, you're only a kid, you don't have a problem, or, grow up. And, I can really relate to someone just sharing with families. I remember my dad coming in my room one day, and he just realized I was using heroin for the first time, and he asked me to stop. And he told me that if I loved him and if I had any respect for his family, that I would stop. And I told him I couldn't stop. And that was the first time where he actually realized that this mental illness was a lot more than just my will, and that I was powerless over it. And he thought I had no respect for him or anybody. Because of all the things I was doing. That was the turning point where, my family kind of realized that, this was a problem. And, but it was still really hard for me to get help. And at the same time, after hearing, being such a young age, and after hearing all these different facilities and places saying that I'm too young, I'm starting to think that I don't have a problem either because I'm only a kid. And you got this, your mind's just playing all these games with you, and you get really depressed, and you go to fix it with a substance, and you get really angry, you fix it with a substance. And I remember at the age of 17, I was living in my car because my parents did not want anything to do with me anymore. And I remember hitting that really low part of my life, depressed, and just to the point where I just didn't care. I had, my mom was the only one there. She was barely there, hanging on, and she offered to help me. She said, because I lived in Connecticut my whole life, so it was, January, it was snowing, and she offered for me to, come live with her if I could, just put the drugs down, and I couldn't do that, and I had, I was at that low point where I didn't care anymore. My depression was going to take over. Like, this was my life. There was nothing that could happen. I called all these places, and I couldn't get in, and I tried. My family's not there anymore. My friends are looking at me differently. I've lost most of them. So I didn't think there was any point of recovery. And I got a phone call a couple nights nights after, and I was actually planning to kill myself that day. I planned this whole day out with a friend, and we were going to, use some substances together. Little did he know that I planned just enough so I wouldn't wake up. And instead, I got a phone call from my mom, and they told me that they were going to fly me down to Mississippi if I wanted to go to treatment in Mississippi. And I remember the first thing I said to my mom was, "Where is Mississippi?" Because I had no idea where it was. And she said, "I don't know, but you're going to go." And I went March 18th of last year, and I've been clean since. And, I just turned my life around a lot, and, I've been able to, by doing so, by, recovering from, the drugs and alcohol and, that part of my addiction, I was able to also see, the roots of my depression and my anxiety and really see where that comes from. And, able to give back to people is great. Able to go to work and, go to the treatment center I work at and, talk to some of the younger kids and, explain to them where I've been, or, talk to a client who has, depression, anxiety, and is nervous at school, talk about my experience with that. Able to really, have that person understand you, it's just a great feeling because that's something I didn't really have when I was going through all my stuff. So, for me being able to give that back is just a blessing in itself. I'm just really grateful to be here today for that.
Mary Beth, you want to tell us a little bit about, as Lindsay did, what it's like to live with a person who has an addiction?
Yeah, I feel like that's really loud. My father died a little over 4 years ago of cirrhosis, and was an alcoholic for the majority of my life. And probably, I don't even know, Lindsay and I actually, my dad was our soccer coach. But yeah. But being the daughter of somebody struggling with that was so difficult. I'm the youngest in my family. And so in my mind for many years I thought I had it worse because I was the youngest, that his drinking was more severe for a longer part of my life. And then I had a conversation with my brother after my dad died, and listening to him talk about what it was like to not have a father as a boy, as, growing into a man, made me like, oh, I don't get to say it was all worse for me, but it was very bad. For several years, it was not my life, because I had to make those decisions. The things that he was doing were so hurtful to me, and you can see still I get teared up about it. It's also one of those things you kind of touched on too, was I was from a good family in Tupelo. Wasn't supposed to talk about what was really going on at home. And also, what that teaches is shame. That there is something wrong with you because your father is this. And so I learned to hide the depression that I dealt with as a result of that and many other things for years. But also losing your father to what did a lot of damage is so hurtful also. And it's one of those things that, I've done a lot of work. I'm a therapist. I've done a lot of work on myself with that. But it's one of those things that I will work with and on for the rest of my life. But also doing my own work in therapy, I was able to look to the flip side to be able to actually work with people with addictions. The one group I said I would never work with. Like, how can they do that to their families? What's wrong with these people? They don't care about anybody but themselves. And I was able to see the flip side of that. That their pain was, and my dad's pain was the same as mine. depression. My staying in the bed and isolating myself was just the same as his drinking. To be able to have that forgiveness for my dad and sadness for him too, like that was his life, and that's not a life. But yeah, so it's difficult on everybody.
One thing I want to touch on is that when you're depressed, it's like you're in a black hole and you can't get out of the hole that's swallowing you alive. And when you feel like it's shameful to talk about, you don't want to talk about it with anybody. And that's really why I'm here today, is that I want to get rid of this stigma that anxiety and depression aren't something that we should talk about. And it is. You need to ask someone, how are you? And I wish that they would answer honestly, like, oh man, I'm not having a good day. I think I failed my test. I wish that someone would actually ask you how you are, and just talk to people more. Go up to a stranger and hug them. They might be dealing with something that you don't know about. And when you're in this black hole, when you feel swallowed, there's not really, you don't feel like there's any hope in the world. And I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I contemplated suicide. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And I wish that people would talk about the resources that are available and how to get help, how to seek help, where to go, So that's something I really think why this is so important to me.
I was just going to say it's kind of based off of that, but even like if you're in recovery from whatever mental illness, whatever kind of problem, that little corner in the door to go back to your problem is always there. You can always open it. Like, there are still days where I struggle all the time, but once you close that door, it's still going to be there. Like, I can hear it, but once you know what life is like behind, like out of those doors into real life and real recovery, it's beautiful. So like, it's still in the back of your head all the time. But you have to know that that's in the past. What's in the past is in the past. You can't go back to it, even though it's always going to want you to go back. But you have to realize that you are here in the present for a purpose now. So you'll get better if you work at it. Yeah, absolutely, every day.
And one of the things I wanted to say too, real quick, about kind of that shame too, is that it, even me now in this field, took a very life-altering situation for me to go to therapy. I was hit by a drunk driver, head on, and it broke my neck at C1 and C2, which you don't survive typically. And I was told I was paralyzed permanently. Obviously, I'm not. But because of that, I couldn't work for quite a few years because of all the surgeries I had to have, which I'm so thankful for now that I had that wreck, because then I could use the wreck as the excuse to go to therapy. Oh, well, that messed me up mentally. But Lord help me, there was so much before that was just as big, if not bigger. But that is what led me to do what I do now, because it can get better. It's hard as hell to do that work, but it's worth it.
Hey. Hi. I just had a question. I didn't know if you were going to do like a question session, but I just had a question.
Okay, go ahead and ask.
Well, first of all, I appreciate all of your perspectives. Thank y'all for being here. I relate very specifically to the two perspectives on that end most left. I have a very close family member that I feel like needs to get help. It's just that at this point, of course, like in the Black community in particular, there's a stigma that, that's not real. Mental illness is not a little thing. Just pray about it. It'll get better. Or turn to God, it'll get better. But God helps those that help themselves. So I guess, what type of resources and advice can y'all give someone? Just with all the laws changing and cuts to certain programs and things, what is a good next step?
What else?
I'm glad.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm really glad you asked that because we actually do have a group of people from our local community mental health center here. Raise your hands, wave. When this is over, they'll be at their table outside. If any of you have any questions, I know they would be happy to help you with those. But, and I know you came in a little late after I had introduced them and let everybody know that they're here. But we do have, there are resources, both private and public, and it's very important to try to find what those are. But in Mississippi, there are community mental health centers, an office, I think I'm still right in saying this, that there's an office of a community mental health center in every single county in the state of Mississippi. And services are provided on a sliding fee scale, so it's affordable. Here at the university, we have a university counseling center that is available to all of our students and faculty. So if you need to talk, you should do that. And I want to, I'm stealing from y'all's time, but I want to make one other statement. Most of the time, symptoms of mental illnesses bring themselves to the surface between the ages of 16, 17, and 24, 25. You are all at that age where if you're going to have a mental illness, this is the age at which it will likely surface. You'll begin to see symptoms. And it may not be as drastic as Lindsay's sister, where everything just falls apart, but you may be finding it harder and harder to get out of bed in the morning because of depression or anxiety, or you may realize that you are running yourself to death trying to stay fit and small and that kind of thing. So, or you may observe it in a friend. So if we do anything today, what we hope we'll do is raise the awareness about mental illness to help fight the stigma of it, because if it happens to 1 in 4 people, is it very selective? It's not. And so one of the things you can do is to be a friend to your friends or even to yourself. And watching for symptoms, learning about symptoms. 13 years ago when I went to work for the Department of Mental Health, did I know a lot about a lot of mental illnesses? Heck no, I didn't. But one of the best resources I ever had was Mental Health America, which you can Google. It has information on how to live healthy, but it also has information on all the diseases, the symptoms, and what resources are available to family members or to the person who's experiencing the mental illness. There's another great website called Bring Change to Mind that was founded by Glenn Close because she had family members with mental illnesses. It's very informative as well, and encouraging that you're not alone if you face a mental illness. So, are there any other questions? And you got that? You can get
Yes, ma'am. I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Can I add something real quick? I was going to talk about counseling, like for a brief second. Counseling was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. And going into it, I was terrified. I kicked and screamed, and I was mad. I mean, I really didn't get that upset, didn't kick and scream, but I was in the back of my head. But because I just thought that wasn't for me. I was like, people like me don't do that. But once I saw, like, everybody has problems. You just have to tear that veil off and you'll be like, nobody's perfect. Only God's perfect, apparently, obviously. And we all have issues. But when you go to counseling and you seek help and you realize that there are people there to listen to you, even if you're just having a bad day, I would text my counselor and she'd know exactly what to say. And I would encourage counseling to anybody. Like, they're awesome. So don't be afraid if you have a problem to go seek help at a counseling center or a therapist or what have you. They're there for you for whatever problem you have, and they won't judge you. That's the best part. I put this huge stigma on counseling, like, oh no, that's not for me, but like it was totally life-changing. So
That's what I was going to mention to her real quick, is find a therapist for yourself. Because dealing with that, we can't focus on wanting somebody to do something that they're not ready to do if they're not. But learning how to work with what's going on with you and getting yourself to a place. Because if you're not in a good place with yourself, when they do come, if they come to get the help, you're not going to be as helpful as you could be if you're not in a good place. That's just my thought.
Lindsay?
I want to address the part about faith and mental health. When my sister first got sick, we come from a very strong Christian family, very deep faith. And we believe that God can do miracles, that miracles still are performed today. When she first got sick, because we had no experience with mental illness, we had no idea what it was. We thought it was anything from a brain tumor to, she had a hysterectomy very early. So we thought it was something medical like that. But then, of course, we had people whisper in our ears, it could be anything like demon possession. If I had diabetes, I would take medicine. If I have cancer, I'm going to take chemo or radiation. And we heard the argument a whole lot. Just pray about it and pray about it. And my junior and senior year, I fasted more. I fasted so much that my doctor told me to stop fasting because it ruined my metabolism for years. And so I know what it's like to be told, just let God handle it. And He can, and He is amazing. But He also gave people wisdom to create medicine to address a problem. It's no different than brain cancer. And so when the community fights you and says, well, this is just something the Lord can handle, He absolutely can. But He can also handle diabetes, but allows people to take medicine for it. And He can also heal my eyes, but I have on contacts right now. And so what was so hard for us is that my sister had a variant of schizophrenia, which was religious schizophrenia. And so her whole idea of God, she may say her ex-husband was God, and that her son was Jesus, and she was going to nail him to the cross. So there he's in a danger. My nephew is in danger. And to be able to balance that and say, God, where are you in all of this? How can they be so mixed up about you and your holiness? And so it's a very tough struggle when religion comes into the mix. But know this, I found more strength and comfort as a caregiver through my faith. And the peace that surpassed any understanding happened through my faith. But I also have been given common sense and know that God has allowed people to be smart enough to create medicine to tackle these problems and to help balance things out. And so you tell them that it's okay to take medicine. I mean, it's fine. And one other thing that you probably saw a billion times at the state hospital was people would do better because they got off of their medicine had started working, they were evened out, and so they believed God had healed them, so they stopped taking their medicine. Well, then all of a sudden they plummet, and they think, well, now God hasn't healed me. No, the medicine's just not in there leveling you out. So that's always important, and I know what it's like to fight that battle of where you're not letting God be God because you're trying to depend on medicine. No, I'm letting Him take care of it through medicine.
Right. Well, I think we're at the end of our time, but I know that everyone on this panel is probably glad to hang around for a few minutes if any of you have specific questions for any person who's shared today. And I will say this, that I hope that what we shared this afternoon will cause you to pause, as is our theme for this week, and think before you ridicule somebody with a mental illness, and that you will ask that question and then listen, how are you today? And let people tell you.